In my own, experience with an organization that I was running, which was a small nonprofit, we did look at who else was working in the space that we were working in, who had really large scale in addressing this problem, and that investigation actually led to us merging forces with another effort, a merger process that we had not expected once we asked the question of who else was working in the space. If you're going to get from 100 people to 1,000 people to tens of thousands of people, it becomes quite expensive to be able to reach those 10,000 people potentially at the same cost you're working at today. So hopefully either your costs are coming down or you're able to get more bang for your buck, so to speak, and reach more people for the same cost. What we like to think about as sort of re-engineering or recreating the value equation. So what is the value equation? The value equation is really thinking about the value that you're bringing into the system and how efficiently you're doing that. To dive into this further, take your piece of paper and write down two things. Start with number one, which is writing down how you could drive more impact for the same cost that you're delivering it at today. The second piece is writing down how you could drive the same impact at a reduced cost. In this exercise, hopefully it's starting to become clearer on what your differentiator is. Think about what you can do that others can't. What complements the work that already exists, and what is sort of uniquely you and differentiated for your organization. Oftentimes, finding that unique value that you add is going to be critical in having those conversations with those actors and knowing where that value is going to be appreciated and welcomed and wanted by these different actors. Thinking about the answers to these questions is something that you can look at internally. Are there things you're doing to drive down costs, be more efficient in the impact delivery that you're having directly as an organization? But they can also be impacted and often are impacted by working with others. Take the piece that we just did around who are those different actors you might be able to work with, and think about if there are any of those individuals or organizations or institutions that might play a role in doubling or increasing the value you can bring or lowering your costs. So in the case of VisionSpring, they were able to work with partners and use existing distribution networks to have their eyeglasses actually be distributed by others instead of building the networks themselves. So for example, they partnered with an organization called BRAC who trains community health workers. And so VisionSpring worked with BRAC to train community health workers to actually sell more eyeglasses. So now VisionSpring's cost of delivery did not include the creation of that distribution network because they were able to leverage what already existed with BRAC. They've already trained 30,000 healthcare workers through BRAC who can now sell affordable eyeglasses. So that's a huge number of people who are now going to be reached through their work. So it's taking that existing asset or resource in the community health workers, for example, and adding more value to it. So another one would be, just reducing the costs. Maybe there's a more efficient way that you can use technology to actually take out cost from your solution. So similarly, if we take that community health worker model, Medic Mobile, for example, is another organization that is using mobile technology as a means to make that community health worker more effective in their interaction with health workers. But the technology is enabling those health workers to actually be able to check up on those patients remotely. So they don't have to visit them every day. They might be able to text them or send an SMS in between. Hopefully, you see here how much more bang for your buck you can get by potentially working with others. one thing that's helpful in this exercise is actually taking a look back. So look at how your costs have changed over time in delivering your model or in delivering value. Is that trend line going up? Is that trend line going down? And if the cost per delivery of that value is going down, then you're already on a great track. What are the things that you were able to do that actually brought that cost down? And reflect on that as you're thinking about other ways that you might be able to continue down that path. If that trend line is going up, then look at the causes for that too. What were the reasons? And in some cases, there's good reason because you're adding more value and into the model, you're improving the model, you're iterating on it, you're experimenting, and that's fine. But then think about how you can then start to bring it down. What are the pieces that might be able to actually bring it down? To do this, you have to already have a sense of what your cost per impact is at some sense, and what those costs, what goes into those costs, so that you can start to think about what might change. I think you need to have a good sense of the value that you're bringing to the system and how much it takes to actually deliver that value. And that requires good potential finances and financial tracking and measurement and monitoring. It also requires good impact monitoring and measurement and evaluation as well. It's very easy to think about, costs when you are delivering a product or service, but when your organization might be purely in a human rights sort of influence space, for example, this may be a little bit tougher. So think maybe more about how you're adding more value for the same cost, and how you might be working with others, and how you can get even, sort of more bang for your buck, and maybe less so on the reducing costs. Another thing that might be helpful is thinking about the supply chain in which you exist in, and where do you fit in that supply chain? Who comes right before and after you? Maybe or even further upstream or further downstream. That also is a great way to think about how you might add more value by maybe working with these other players, and or reducing the costs by looking at where you fit within that supply chain and who else are deterrents or potentially enablers to your be able to deliver more value at a lower cost. Example of Vision Spring, when they partnered with BRAC, in that case, in that specific example, they realized that, within their supply chain, that they could leverage others who had the distribution points and connection to patients instead of building it on their own. While we should be ambitious in our thinking, try to think about what's really feasible. So in the case of using mobile technologies, for example, or technology as a lever for cost efficiency, think within things that already exist. In some areas of the world, connectivity is an issue. So you may not be able to work with a data plan, but you may be able to do straight sort of SMS texting. So think within those pieces as you get further down into actually making some of these thoughts a reality. But it's okay to stay at the high level for this exercise right now. But just be mindful of, as you go through this, you want to be able to think about what's really feasible. This is always a good exercise to be making sure that you're being rigorous in how efficiently you're able to deliver the value that you're delivering. But taking a second to reflect on it might open up opportunities for adding more value and really thinking about scaling your work in different ways. There's value in taking a step back from the day-to-day work and thinking about how you are already maybe adding value, or create light bulb moments for you where you might realize there might be other ways to do that.